Well, we have a lot to cover here this morning, so why don't we just jump in, Keith, with a couple introductions and just let folks know who we are and what we'll be talking about today, and I'll get things going. My name is Dan. We have pictures so you know who's who, in case that's a puzzle. And I look after all things marketing here at Reveal Mobile, and we really eat, sleep, and breathe geofencing. We run, I should say, we help our customers run all manner of location-based marketing campaigns with a self-serve geofencing technology that is really applicable to just about any consumer vertical you can think of where there are rooftops, physical rooftops involved. So we've seen it all, and we're really excited about being able to work with Keith on on the DSP side and for all kinds of channel activation. So with that, Keith, give us a quick intro, if you would.
Sure. Keith Gruberman, CEO and co-founder of Pontiac Intelligence, which is a demand-side platform. Our niche tends to be smaller business, medium-sized businesses, local franchise-style businesses that across the U.S., Canada, a couple other countries in the world, and we cater to folks that have, we like to say, non-consistent budgets, and our platform has no minimums. Is the quote that is the I guess term that we use, and that's what we do. So Pontiac Intelligence is a no minimum DSP. It's got a bunch of features and different integrations, which is how any DSP competes on the market. But obviously, we're integrated with you guys and do you are able to bring geofencing to clients and all of that in our platform. So that's why we're here today to talk about how you can launch campaigns and do this. Your geo data and our targeting and ad buying platform together can execute a campaign.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of like the old, you got my chocolate, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter, you got my peanut butter and your, it's like that. Like you want to have those two things together. Thanks for humoring me on that little analogy. So we're going to cover, guys and gals, all kinds of topics today. And the webinar is full of both data, both sort of qualitative and quantitative information. So we hope you walk away with a really good sense of how to run a smart geofencing campaign through a demand-side platform, because budgets are super tight, right? We know that everyone is getting either their budgets cut or their budgets scrutinized at a minimum. So we're going to talk through some of the economic pressures in the webinar. We're going to talk about ad serving beyond Facebook, because of course everyone's there, but not everyone is staying there. And we're going to talk about where the money is going. Where are people actually divesting social, and where are they actually investing, which is a lot of what we're going to cover today. And then it wouldn't be a full webinar without talking about privacy. That's a huge consideration. We're going to cover off on that to make sure everyone's fully informed. And then we're going to wrap up with what really matters most, and that is measuring the impact of your ad spend. And we'll give you some insights and some tools into how to do that when you run media through a DSP. And of course, we want to make sure we answer any questions. We imagine this webinar will give rise to a number of questions, hopefully fewer than are answered, but still, we want to make sure that anything that's lingering gets answered. So anytime you've got a question during this session today, just pop it into the questions box on the GoToWebinar console, and those will stack up, and then Keith and I will field those here at the end of the webinar. And we should have you out of here within the next half hour, depending on how many questions you've got or so. So with that, let me just kind of lay out an argument for geofencing and give everyone a common vocabulary for what we're talking about when we talk about geofencing. The way we think about it at Reveal Mobile is really in two different buckets. We think about it in terms of segmentation and targeting, and then we think about it in terms of attribution. So clearly this has impacts on the way you plan, the way you buy, and of course then the way you measure. So on the planning and buying side, geofencing kind of rolls up to three major advantages. The first one is around loyalty, maintaining the customers you have fought so hard to win. We know shopping patterns have changed radically in the last couple of years, and it's hard to keep customers coming back. Geofencing is actually a very effective strategy for that. So think about it in terms of a cookie on a website. This is almost the same thing, except it's not a cookie and it's in the real world, right? This is using an ad ID, a mobile ad ID, to retarget your customers and keep them coming back to your stores. So that's just blocking and tackling stuff, right? Nuts and bolts of marketing is retention. What's really important though here is net new customer acquisition. And this is where a lot of marketers are investing today, right? Help me grow my share of the pie. So that is, we see that also coming to the fore in geofencing in terms of our own customers actually geofencing or geoframing, it's sometimes called, their competitors, and then marketing to those people specifically with a better offer, a better experience, a better price, whatever the advantages you want to convey. You're then stealing share from that competition. You know these people are already in market because they're buying the product, they're just buying it at the wrong place, and you're bringing them over to your store or to your locations. So a really effective way to grow your share of the pie. And this is especially effective in mature markets or in low margin markets where you just want to steal share. And then the last benefit around the segmentation and targeting piece comes in the form of new customer acquisition without stealing share and just growing, just greenfield growth, right? And this is where we see a lot of our own customers geofencing locations that they know their ideal customer shop. As an example, maybe you are marketing a healthy food product. Let's say you're a, I don't know, let's say you're a Whole Foods. I'll just make this up on the fly. You're Whole Foods, and you've already stolen your share from Trader Joe's, and you've stolen your share from Sprouts, and you've stolen your share from all the green grocers in the world. But now you need to go further afield and find people who maybe go to the gym, or people who work out at yoga studios, or people who hike on trails for that matter. And these are not, of course, competitive locations. These are just places you know your customers also go because you're marketing Whole Foods in this case. So really three really smart ways to think about segmenting your audience, targeting, and then of course, serving, and Keith will talk all about that. Now jumping ahead, let's imagine we've served ads, and let's just pretend that part is over, or at least our campaign is in flight. One of the really cool things we can do with geofencing is actually tie our paid media to foot traffic in stores. And by virtue of having a clear view into unique visits, offline visits, you can extrapolate in-store sales. If you know your average ticket or your average basket, it's a super easy multiplication problem to go from 1,000 visits to, I don't know, $100,000 in-store sales, right? And the cool thing is we're going to do this today on the programmatic side. We're going to talk to you how to do this with programmatic media. But using this kind of technology, I'll just throw this in as a freebie. You can also do this with all the walled gardens of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you name it. But for the sake of this webinar, of course, we're talking about the programmatic side. So you can tie your ad spend served through Pontiac or any DSP for that matter, right to the actual people who are visiting your stores. So with that, let me talk a little bit about where our wallets and pocketbooks are in this moment of sort of economic uncertainty. Everyone's nervous. Are we in a recession? Are we not? It depends on what link you click. Frankly, nobody's sure. But fact of the matter is, marketers are under scrutiny more so than we ever have been. And by and large, 70% of ad buyers, people like us, think that the economy is on the skids, right? We're a little bit slowing down, things are sluggish, customers aren't flowing in like they used to, tables aren't being filled at restaurants, cars are not rolling off of lots, all kinds of implications are happening because people are nervous. And when people are nervous, they don't spend money. Now, interestingly, marketers, of course, are decreasing their ad spend commensurate with that demand or commensurate with that softening of the economy, but the outlook is rosy, and we are expected actually to firm things up, both on the economic side, on the economy side, and on the ad spending side in the second half of this year. So we actually will see growth in advertising overall. We're expected to see growth in advertising overall by the time 2023 rolls up at 10%, which is a decent amount of growth, modest, but decent. So just to set the record straight, we're not going to see a decline in ad dollars spent. We're actually going to see just a slowing of growth. So an important distinction, right? Last year, ad spend grew at a greater rate than 10%. This year, it's going to grow at about 10%. So yes, we're nervous. Yes, times are a little bit uncertain, but the sky is certainly not falling. And this proves actually where a lot of folks are bullish, right, and spending. So this is all data from IAB, Internet Advertising Bureau, for those of you who are not in that loop. Really a clearinghouse for paid media spend data on both the buy side and the sell side. So that's where our data comes from for the sake of this portion of the webinar. And you can see that in a lot of segments, growth is actually going to exceed 10%, right? Travel segment, food and dining, call it hospitality, maybe. Retail, CPG, a little bit lighter than 10%, but still a decent amount of growth is going to happen in those segments. The only consumer segment where ad spending is expected to drop over 2022 is in the auto industry, which is interesting because that, of course, is a news article every month, right? We see forecasts in the auto industry changing all the time. But you can see, by and large, marketers are spending in the consumer verticals at a pretty healthy clip through the calendar year. And big surprise, maybe not. We're not doing it all on Facebook anymore. This is data from eMarketer, and it shows you eMarketer's forecast for Meta ad revenue, that is both Facebook and Instagram, over the course of 2024, through the course of 2024. And back in March of this year, or I should say a year ago, March of 2022, I gotta get my years straight, eMarketer was giving Meta a pretty healthy growth rate, topping out at $167 billion worldwide by the time 2024 ended. 6 months later, as we all saw the signs of the economy sort of caving a little bit, eMarketer reeled that way in. And in 2022, the forecast came in at 112 billion, which is a full 10% lower than it was supposed to be. In 2023, they're forecasting only 121 billion, roughly 15%, maybe more of where it was supposed to be. And then in 2024, they're forecasting only 134 billion, which is probably close to 30% of where it was supposed to be in eMarketer's original forecast. Why is this happening? Well, with really low CPMs on Facebook, people are still diversifying their portfolio because they know that Facebook gives you access to maybe one audience or one channel, of course, maybe two if you use Instagram. But unlike a DSP, Facebook is a one-trick pony, right? Facebook is a one and done, and that's all you get. With a DSP, which is what Keith is going to talk about, you have access to myriad digital channels for the sake of both brand awareness and customer activation. So this chart is simply to illustrate just how much marketers are moving away from the likes of Facebook. So where are they going? Well, this chart tells you that. A lot of the smart money is moving into CTV, sometimes called OTT, over-the-top video or streaming video. A lot of money, of course, no change here, is going to paid search. And then a lot of streaming audio as well, both podcasts and then non-podcast audio. A lot of people are investigating the likes of streaming music networks, and of course, the podcasts that right alongside those. A couple other channels I want to call out on this slide where marketers are moving their money into. Digital out of home, really smart channel for both customer acquisition and customer activation. And of course, social media is pretty durable. We know that money is moving out of Facebook and Meta, but there's still money moving into TikTok. So it's sort of taking over that place of where Meta used to be. By no stretch is TikTok on the same footing, ad revenue-wise, as Meta. Meta is orders of magnitude richer than TikTok in terms of ad spend, but TikTok is growing at a much faster clip than Meta, than Facebook and Instagram are. And then interestingly, you can see some of the traditional channels which have seen year-over-year declines, not to mention quarter-over-quarter declines. A lot of money is moving out of traditional media, print, broadcast TV, broadcast radio. So the last slide I have here, before we move over into Keith's portion, is about why we're spending this money. So we've seen where it's going, and this is really why it's going to those places. And by and large, marketers are as smart as they come, right? We are moving money into acquisition channels. And that's really what a demand-side platform buy is all about. It's about not just awareness and air cover, but it's about moving customers to take action on a call to action of some kind. And we'll talk through that here momentarily. Of course, brand will endure for years to come. That's still a reason marketers will always have jobs and need to perform, right? So that's going to be a major center of gravity through 2023. And then not surprisingly, I'm just going to focus on the first three. Efficiency is critical. We want our ad dollars. If we have $1 to spend, we want to make sure we're not just getting $1.10 back. We want $1.50, or we want $1.80 back, right? Best of all, we want $2. But if we can get $1.50 back for a dollar spent, that's really what we need in this moment of economic uncertainty, economic softening. Now, you can see that on the right side of the screen, more data from IAB. Marketers are investing in measurement. They want to know what happens when I spend my money in a DSP. What kind of reporting do I get? Is it reliable? Is it authoritative, right? So with that, we're really, as a group, we're really focusing heavily on making sense of the ad spend and making sense of the ad impact. So all that to say, that tees up sort of the portion of the webinar that Keith is going to walk through around DSP blocking and tackling, and then really how to spend super smart money. So with that, Keith, tell us about Pontiac.
Yeah, I think you kind of laid it out. I think most marketers are settling into digital buying, and you know what? This settling in. This might have been how it's been for the last 10 years. But like social platforms, there's more diversification, as you mentioned. Okay, there's Reddit, Nextdoor. We call it like 9 to 10 now that really exist as like social avenues to spend your money. And a programmatic platform is designed so that all advertising space, mostly banners and online video, and now CTV, but also podcasts and audio, and you can do a lot. There's a lot of home stuff you can do now. But like, I think it's best to think of, if you're a marketer, is like the demand side platform is a way to get a lot of the stuff and access to a lot of it. The word remnant comes up. This is stuff that's generally unsold when it's at its best. You have to have fraud tools. You have to know what you're doing. You have to buy from trusted sellers and publishers. But in the marketing stack, when I talk to marketers directly, it's really about like, you got to get your measurement tools and other ancillary tools. That's what you guys do around geofencing. Different ones do it for pharma. Different ones do it for contextual stuff, obviously. So I think that the DSP is like a way to acquire ad space that's not the walled gardens, which I think is known, and it fits into the stack. And some people spend 50% of their money or 60% of their money through these tools now, and some spend 10% because they still invest a lot in social or a lot in search or whatever it is. So I think that, or print, every business is different. So I think that when we talk about the demand side platform and Pontiac Intelligence, which is ours, that we've built proprietary, we talk to clients about how it works and what they can buy, but we really focus on, acquiring quality inventory, making sure you're clearing it on quality real sites that you and I read, and then layering in all types of targeting and different effectiveness. And at the end of the day, the DSP landscape is broad, but like the pillars we use are ones we've used for years, which is just making sure our tool is transparent. You know how much it costs, you know how much our service fees are, or our technology fee for you using our platform. But everything's transparent. The CPMs move because it's a dynamic pricing environment. But our focus is getting the right inventory. And again, you have to have all the tools and all the bells and whistles, which you guys obviously allow clients to do the targeting and measurement using geoframing and all that. But that's just a piece that plugs into our platform, which again is access to the world. We could get Hulu and Roku with the high quality publications on the web. You could get Food Network video, as well as video across the weather providers and all that type of thing. So we're an access point to inventory with these tools. That's the way to describe a DSP. I think it fits in here pretty well. When you mentioned CTV's high growth, well, demand side platforms in the CTV realm, CTV in general is in its nascent stages. So you have a lot of things that happen when new technology avenues emerge. You have a lot of new companies, a lot of murkiness in terms of explanations on how it's all working and pricing. But we built a part of our platform is a bidder, the technology that buys these ads, a DSP that buys these ads, and we've plugged it into a few of these major exchanges, and we're working with a couple publishers directly and a whole list, obviously. But we have our own pipes that go get CTV advertising, which can be very very strong. We're going to touch on privacy, but there's talk about how they pass or can let you use the IP address for like household targeting. Others provide different methods of targeting. Others provide different levels of reporting. Some of them let you see what show you ran on, some of them don't. So a lot of what we focus on is bringing like clarity to the buyer, helping them pick the right channels and getting the best stuff that fits their brand, multicultural, certain languages, certain targets, just like anything else. And of course, any geolocation data we can get. Typically, this is household targeting as opposed to mobile device targeting, which obviously causes some issues there. But not impossible to use privacy-safe device graphs and other ways to try to close that loop, which we do. It's not perfect. Again, signal loss, and we're going to talk about the privacy stuff. But many people do opt in. It is done with the user's privacy in consideration, and there is some cool stuff you can do. Today, talking to all of you, thanks for coming. I find that when you get into the weeds on the technology a little bit, or as Dan did a very nice job, Dan, on the description of why and how you use geo-targeting, I like to spend 1 second, just bring it back to the marketer's view where, you can execute these plans based on a simple insertion order where you get clear description on what you're buying. And make it turnkey. So obviously that's something we do. We try to make this easy for buyers to activate. We use the word activate a lot. But that's kind of, I just thought, Dan and I were talking about who might attend this and how we might, who we might be speaking to. And I think that it's so complicated. Some of these concepts, when we get into the targeting and how it all works and privacy, all that, it gets very complicated. I mean, it just does. There's nothing you can do. We're talking about web and mobile operating system infrastructure. There's nothing you can do. It's complicated. So this is just a way to kind of explain to the marketers out there that if you're interested in trying these things, if you want to activate in a certain area or do the conquesting that Dan walked through, we made it really easy. A lot of companies do this now, but just to show you an example of how clear we make it, make sure that it's simple, transparent, again, on our fees and everything. But wanted to show that it's like, if you're a marketer and you're like, this sounds interesting, but how do I get involved? I don't have a programmatic team. I don't have whatever, an agency that handles all of this. Every client has different media activation agencies. So at the end of the day, just showing kind of how, I don't want to say simple it is, but an example of just like how we frame it up so everybody knows what's going on and fits it into a normal cadence of activation. As I said, we'd use that word a couple times. This is a screenshot from the Reveal mobile platform that lets you actually activate a geofence of trying to identify people that might be there that you can conquest or people that arrive there later. And listen, this is based on long pings from generally a list of apps that have people opt in to sharing this information every 30 seconds or minute or whatever it is. And all of that is under strict privacy adherence and making sure that it fits in. All the Apple devices fit in with Apple Tracking and Transparency Initiative. Mobile IDs have been deprecated across many operating systems and shared and not shared as much. So there's, any marketer, I think it's important to spend a second here to explain that, like, this is not like you're going to get 100% match rate of like people that went in over there. People also, if you know anything about how you've ever used Find My Phone or other things on your phone to locate, it doesn't usually get you right in the spot you're standing. Might be 5 meters, might be 15 meters. So listen, there's some caveats to the exactness, but it's really cool when you use it directionally or you use it over long periods of time to try to influence your decision making. Again, still making sure you're on quality inventory. That's when we see this really show its effectiveness. And listen, it's hard. Privacy laws are changing every couple months now. There's new legislation in the US. There's new things you have to deal with. It's not going away. It's only going to get more serious. But again, some people opt in to share all of this data. And if we don't need 100%, we accept whatever the match rate is. It might fall to very low over time. I don't think that that's necessarily something that should deter the value that can be derived from this. It's still a very interesting way to execute and to look at the data and what's out there. Again, can't be blind to what ads and where your ads are running, which is a tendency for some of the ad networks that do this, make it a little bit murky. But again, if you can do both well. You just need to have the right technology partners and tools, which is why we're here today.
Right on. I appreciate that, Keith. And to your point on privacy, there are 50 states in the US, everyone a little bit different. And what we don't want is 50 privacy laws, right? We'd love to have one at the federal level. It makes things easy, right? Makes things easier to program for. That said, as privacy laws do emerge and get passed into law at the state level, every one of those is accommodated for with the technology you're looking at here. So I want to make sure that people are clear on the fact that we've checked all those boxes before they even need to become a question.
Which I think is very important to say, is not to fear kind of what these regulations and changes are going to require, but simply to have partners that are ahead of the curve, addressing them as they come, can explain them in English what the hell is going on, and talk about the partners and methods in which we do it, where it's all, again, opt-in and brand safe. And again, this is not, it doesn't have the same vibe and feeling as certain campaigns that are more around retargeting in display, or like high activation, where like every shopping cart abandoner for retailers in buying is very concerned about signal loss with remarketing because cookies are going away. It's kind of everyone, but there's cookie, that's really affecting buyers because there's such a high value to every one of those opportunities in terms of the ad impressions. It's very valuable to them. So the fact that they spent $1 million on remarketing last year, and due to the cookie deprecation, they can only spend 250 grand this year. That's a big deal to some of these guys in terms of how they record their revenue numbers, their return on ad spend. In this world, this is directional. This is a way of showing us the value on where the media is being placed. It's not one to one. We're not like tracking the person to buying the thing in the Lowe's. This is not. We can't promise they're buying the Whole Foods example. We can't promise we're selling the peanut butter that we're representing in the Whole Foods. And people that walk in, a lot of them we won't be able to actually measure. But that's okay. There's signal loss, but it's not zero. And it's not about this. It's not about trying to shy away. Again, it's about being able to determine what it is and having partners that make sure that all the privacy compliance is taken care of. And that's what I think you guys do a nice job. And obviously, we make a point of it as well.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And actually, speaking of plain language, you mentioned a second ago, we try to break it down into very clear, accessible pieces. I want to land on this slide and end with this visual of ways to think about measurement. So you're going to serve media in any number of channels through a demand-side platform, right? You have full control over that. And that was the sample media plan Keith showed a moment ago is a nice sort of breakdown of how you might think about channels, CPMs, geos, all those things. At the end of the day, though, you want to know what happened as a result. And at Reveal Mobile, we think about this ourselves because we know marketers are visceral in terms of what they're expecting, right? So in terms of measuring a geofencing campaign, where you've effectively addressed an audience that is built and activated based on places they have shopped in the past, your Whole Foods shoppers, Pizza Hut, name it, doesn't matter. This is the way to think about the impact of that spend. So let me start on the top left with campaign lift. You can see here a campaign lift of 332%. And what that is a simple breakdown of the people who visited the location before they were exposed to your ad in the low dark blue bar, compared to the portion of people who visited your location after being exposed to the ad. So after being exposed to the ad, there was a 332% lift in visits to your locations. So you can very easily say to your stakeholders, whether you are an agency speaking to clients or you are a brand marketer speaking to your GM, hey, we ran that ad through Pontiac, and as a result of that spend, we saw a 332% lift in visits to our physical stores, right? That's pretty meaningful. Now, if percentages aren't enough to articulate that value, we also give you the raw number of unique visits in the pie chart to the right. So you could think about this in terms of actual humans walking into a set of locations or an individual location, although the more rooftops you have, the more impact you're going to bring. And we tell you flat out, we saw, by virtue of mobile ad IDs that have opted in, 1,560 visits to the locations you care about. And of course, you dictate those locations in the campaign planning and buying process. We also break down the number of people we saw for the first time. That mobile ad ID has never had a location event in this place. And we also give you the number of people who were returning. So a location event was pinged on their phone prior to the ad, and they've now shown back up as a result of being exposed to the ad. Regardless, those 1,560 people saw the ad and then turned up at the Whole Foods, or you name it, right? Now let me draw your eye down to the bottom left and talk about the number of days it takes for a conversion to actually happen. By virtue of a typical flight, let's call it 30 days, we know that not everyone's going to take action on day 1, day 2, maybe even day 5. But we remove all the guesswork in wondering how long it does take for that point of diminishing returns by giving you a view into every single day and the number of conversions per day. So you can see even after 30 days of this campaign being in flight, there were still drips and drabs of people turning up at your target locations. Target with a lowercase t, by the way. And clearly, it diminishes over time, but you know that you're spending smart money, even on day 18, day 19, day 22, there's a meaningful volume of conversions happening, even after the glow of the launch has faded, right? So have confidence that your ad spend is enduring and enduring wisely. And then the bottom right chart I want to end on. The top right you can sort of deduce on your own. It's very straightforward in terms of pixeled impressions, devices matched, households reached, etc. That's good marketing data for the digitals among us. The bottom right chart tells you the number of times it takes the average audience member to convert after seeing your ad. Let me say that differently. That was not clear. The number of times it takes an audience member to see your ad before they convert, right? So just like days to convert, I might not come to your Whole Foods until day 18 because it's just not a priority to me. But you know what? Your ad actually planted that seed that is Whole Foods this time and not Trader Joe's. But I had to see your ad 4.1 times on average to make that decision. So you can, of course, plan frequency with your budget and your audience size. You know that you need to serve that ad or that volume of impressions n times to get that average conversion. And you're going to get conversions after 1 exposure or 2 exposures or 10 exposures. But on average, someone needs to see your ad, in this case, 4 times for them to actually do the thing you want them to do. So there's all kinds of metrics beyond these. Of course, we often measure too many things as marketers. But when we think about delivering real results to the people who care most about what's happening in marketing, the CFO, the COO, the chief commercial officer, the operations team, these are the numbers they really care about, right? You can talk through click-through rate, you can talk through impressions, you can talk through, cost per action, but what they want to know is what was the top line impact, and this is that. So with that, let's make sure we get to some questions here and answer what's in the room. Let me open up the queue here and start with number 1. Can you expand further on your comment about applicability to walled gardens? Yeah, I think I mentioned that first. Keith, you also mentioned it though. I'll start, and of course you fill in here, Keith. The way we think about geofencing, you can do it, as we're talking about in this webinar, through a demand-side platform and address any number of audiences through any number of digital channels, right? OTT or CTV, digital out of home, programmatic display, streaming audio, streaming video, as Keith spoke to. Separately, not through a DSP, you can address those same audiences on Facebook or on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or Pinterest, you name it. Pick your favorite social media platform. And those are what I was referring to as walled gardens, because of course they are they are protectors of their own data in the same way Google is. A DSP though reaches into a number of different channels, buys inventory, and then serves ads to those audiences via those channels, websites, streaming audio, streaming video, you name it. So my point earlier was you can do geofencing on both the DSP side, and if you wanted to, you could also do it on the paid social side. Anything to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, we we have a services team that buys social. So I just as a person who buys social, like this person who asked the question, does the tool work on the attribution side as well? You guys have integrations with the with these platforms that allow you to actually do the targeting and the attribution, or is that by platform that problem?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Do you guys have the ability to do the measurement side of it with you could do targeting, say we want to target these people on the social platforms.
Yep.
Can you guys always do the measurement side as well, or does that vary platform to platform?
We do the measurement too. So we correlate paid media ad spend to in-store visits. Yes.
Gotcha. So there's different methods you might use depending on the signals, but generally, yes, you do that.
Yes.
Well, that's cool. That's probably what this person's getting at, because that is pretty cool.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. Next question, I think is right in your wheelhouse. Are you able to combine geo with CTV? In other words, can you advertise on Food Network or whatever, but only in specific zip codes, or is it more generalized than that?
That's a great question. CTV demand will have the capabilities to target by the zip code. If the publisher exposes the IP address, you can use that. That's what all demand side platforms use to geo triangulate the user, using these maps of IP address to zip code correlation provided by a variety of companies. Digital Envoy, Google uses their own system. A company called MaxMind does this. Variety group of others. So the IP address mapping to zip code is possible, usually 90% of the time. There are cases where the CTV publisher will not pass you any IP address on the client side, meaning the person watching the CTV ads. When that happens, you have to work with the publisher to declare it. So if you work with some of the premier guys, not to pick on them personally, but like NBC, you want to activate something along Peacock or one of their channels, all possible, all targetable by the zip code, but that's when you have to work out with the deal with them as we craft kind of the buy. So always zip code available. The methods we do it might vary slightly based on the publisher, but in general, it's the same as other programmatic, which uses the person watching the ad's IP address or truncated IP address, which kind of makes it like they're in a group of 15 or 20, which lets people still do the zip code analysis.
That is really powerful. Having that combination of filters effectively, to put it in sort of simple terms, that is a super powerful way to address an audience.
The CTV buying also, again, I've kept this theme consistent here, but like we have access to billions of ad opportunities every day. That is a lot. The actual numbers of worthy to buy in the billion is way under 1%, way under 1%. So the correct filters and how you make sure that you buy quality inventory and do it with the geo targeting you want to execute and other things, audience data, time of day, day of week, all types of things, different creative units. You can do all that, and that's kind of in the CTV world, it's a little bit different than typical programmatic or a social platform, where you got to make some of the relationships with the publishers. Like, as I said, NBC, Disney, these guys, Discovery and Warner Brothers, Turner, those are big publishers of great CTV inventory. Not to say that Sling and Roku and Pluto and Philo and all types of called MVPDs. It's a fragmented ecosystem due to the nature of TV. The TV influence makes it really fragmented. But you can get it all, and you can get really good stuff, and you can do a lot of this cool targeting stuff. But it takes a little bit more of having the relationships and activations with all of these publishers, which we do and bring to our end clients. And again, try to not simplify it so you don't know what you're buying, simplify it so you do know what you're buying, but do it really well.
Next question is around geofencing based on parameters. So the question is, do you geofence based on location? In other words, mobile location events that are GPS based, or behavior? In other words, purchase behavior. The short answer for Reveal Mobile is that we geofence based on location. We don't have point of sale data available in our platform. but we could extrapolate, as I mentioned, top line sales based on a store visit. Anything to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, the basic difference we're taught when you say that type of thing, your biggest again, and to your point, the source of the data here is going to be mobile phones that are in certain locations that have opted into sharing this with some apps and variety of people that Reveal Mobile is able to source it from. Okay, so the source data when we talk about geofencing is based on mobile phone location. Now, through device graphs and other things, you correlate it to cookies or other things. Behavioral data or retail data or point of sale data is going to be ultimately like email addresses and phone numbers from these retailers, but it's going to be mapped to cookie IDs and more traditional identifiers. Some mobile devices, but a lot of more traditional programmatic cookies and the like. So the source data here a little bit is the difference between like mobile IDs in locations and email addresses onboarded to cookies and some mobile IDs, but mobile ID to phone number is not an easy match. Those are very private. They're different buckets of categories. So it's very hard to match those. And again, jumping these privacy hoops is a big deal. So at the end of the day, retail data is a little bit more core programmatic, which is like a little bit more cookie based, whereas this is really mobile device based. There's ways to compare, but there's loss on both sides, talking about like signal loss. So you could combine them, you could run them head to head. Our platform will let you target retail data and behavioral data segments all day. So you could do them in tandem, but we would look at them as different strategies, as different approaches. If you did the attribution side, the one that's targeting the mobile device is going to show a lot more response than ones on CTV or desktop with retail data that are jumping through some type of device graph to figure out if they showed up. Not zero, but much less. Not that that's bad. Again, this is all about how you look at it and measure it, and what you're ultimately looking for is directional and signals that you can use to make decisions. So I would say it's, again, this stuff is complicated. There's nothing you can do. But on the basic side, it's a little bit of the source data is a little bit of like mobile phone ID to cookies. That's if I was blanketing it, that's as simple as I would try to make it.
Next question is for you, Keith. How do you define quality media? I know when I see it, but is there a benchmark to consider? Is there anything quantitative you can consider when defining quality media?
Great question. That is a great question, and clearly something I struggle with and talk about. I would say no. I would say if you're a good media buyer, you have a slight skepticism to all the numbers. Now, if you look at sales receipts, okay, and you have the correct system set up, then trust the numbers. I would trust the numbers. But when you're talking about media and signals and cookies and post-view attribution and a lot of stuff, you know, we work with some of the most advanced buyers, and they teach me a lot about brand advertising, these people, to be honest with you. And at the end of the day, I believe this is a little bit in the eye of the beholder. Are you looking at the site lists of where everything's clearing? Are all the partners buying the media for you? Are you looking at where they're serving it? Do you go to these websites? Do you use these apps? Listen, I understand that there could be quality in a media buy that I wouldn't label as quality, but I am capable of understanding what the environment and the user's doing here, why they're there, and why that might be a good match. But I'm also, I've been around using the internet long enough to know when some website is like rampant with slideshows, not necessarily right where I want to be. It could be on one of the most legitimate URLs that exist, but it means that might be low quality to me. Whereas it's like an art. This is an art, not a science. So my general answer is no. There's a lot of tools. You have fraud tools. You have attention tools. You have contextual tools. You got a lot of tools, a lot of ways to look at what you're buying. I would say when I talk to the best buyers, they're picking out sites they don't want to be on. They're tidying up site lists and app lists and CTV channels and zip codes using different research. I mean, they're focused a lot on bottom-up optimization, making sure that they don't serve on things they don't want to. They keep it a little bit open to the world and learn, but there's big lists of don't serve here and don't serve here that are constantly looked at and updated. When it's done correctly, all forms of media will pass you detail on where you're buying it. Okay, there's some murkiness with partners which say we can't get that. If it's done correctly, you can basically always get that. Okay, you may not know what publication it was from some high-end publisher. Okay, Hearst or Condé Nast come up, or the Times. You might not know what page because of the price or whatever, but you'll know something. So I think that it's an art. It's not a science, but I would say you should be able to see the data in a dashboard that's easy to read or whatever from all partners. That gives you the ability to do it a little bit yourself. Do a little gut check and check it yourself. Good buyers I know check it once a quarter. It's not dominating their lives, but they keep it. I mean, use all the tools. So, again, they're not that expensive, these tools, fraud tools and whatnot, to use them. But I'd say that the best buyers know that it's like walking around an art gallery and they browse through there once a quarter and make some decisions.
Fair. There's one more question in the queue that I want to get to. And if anyone else has any other questions, of course, please pop them in. Otherwise, we're going to finish with this one. Do you have any concerns about future changes to ad platforms like Facebook, removing the ability to target audiences based on device ID? And what would your approach be to reconcile that potential loss to those ad buys? Good question. We never know what tomorrow is going to bring. And I'll speak to this because, of course, we work with a lot of the social platforms ourselves. Please add to this. We always worry about tomorrow, but of course, we have zero control over what it actually delivers. Fact of the matter is, you can target on Facebook using any number of filters, both built in. Facebook has a ton of great audience building tools. You can actually target based on location in Facebook. Of course, you can only get down to a mile radius, which is a blunt object if you're talking about geoframing. Or you can upload custom audiences, which is our preferred methodology. You can take a list of mobile ad IDs, upload those to Facebook or you name it, any other social platform as a custom audience, and then you are constraining your ad buy just to those million or whatever number of audience members on Facebook and nobody else. So you create a walled garden inside of a walled garden, which is a great way to control your ad buy and your ad results. So unless and until Facebook turns off custom audiences, which I don't see them doing, I don't think anybody does. LinkedIn does it, Snapchat does it, Pinterest does it. Name your social platform, they all allow for the upload of custom audiences, and those data values vary. You're going to be running really smart, really contained geofencing campaigns that can deliver a clear line of sight to top line. Anything to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, I would say that's when you're talking about vendors and partners, there's hard things to measure. There's the intangibles, which are like, do I trust that they're looking out for my brand? Are they ahead of the curve in terms of what's coming and how we're going to deal with it? One thing that hasn't changed in the getting old, almost 30 years they've been buying these digital ads. One thing that hasn't seemed to change is that it's hard to figure out what's effective. This has been going on for a long time, and it's because of some of the technology gaps, because of some of the platforms and how they like to skew the data to show themselves as superior. But at the end of the day, all of the platforms want to try to bridge the consistent gap of giving advertisers a way to measure the effectiveness of the media targeting, and the users feeling that the privacy experience is of the highest regard. And the people at Facebook and Apple and Google and all of these platforms are very concerned with this. Big meetings, lots of lawyers, lots of people, technology leads. Okay, this is big stuff. And they make a lot of changes. Okay, they do a lot of things. Okay, the big guys who have the hardware that we all use, they have a lot of control. Cable companies have control of things. They're all always going to be morphing and changing the way we do it, and you have to deal with it. But they know that some type of individual attention and capabilities on the targeting and the measurement side are always going to be paramount. They always need to provide some way to do this. I was just reading today about the SKA network, which is the language for like the way to do the tracking in the app transparency project from Apple, iOS tracking. They're starting to make ways that it's starting to fit into the new framework where they deem it to be, Apple's very concerned with privacy. They're deeming this to be, and it's starting to provide ways to do more attribution. And like in the end of the day, Apple has a way of leading this curve a little bit, of being as centric as they are on the privacy side. But I would say that there's always going to be change. There's always going to be new hurdles and different issues, and it might affect how much you invest or how much you can measure in one channel or another. But that's your vendors and partners, problem. They got to come to you with what's coming. How does this affect it? What's this going to do? What does this mean? I'd say that the best partners and platforms do that for all their clients. And it's a focus, and it's a pain in the behind. And nobody's likes talking about privacy. Even the people in that big room, it's not the most exciting meeting. So I think that the truth is that there will be changes. You're right. Device IDs, Android's talking about pulling them. So there will be hurdles. There will be diminishing reach, but not meaning that you shouldn't do it or have a way to make sure you activate that and stay ahead of the curve there.
Right on. I appreciate that, Keith. That's super deep expertise, clearly, in all of your answers. I appreciate that. It looks like we might have one more question that just popped in. Let me take a look. Do you have a resource location to view past webinars you've covered on the topic? Yes, we do, certainly at Reveal Mobile, revealmobile.com. We have a resources section of our site. You can peruse that and check out all of the recorded webinars that we've logged over the many months and few years we've been doing these. Keith, anywhere you would point other folks to check out your resources?
For sure. Yes, this is, thank you for hosting this, and thank you for your insight, and it was fun to be part of, so I appreciate the invitation and the partnership. For us, you can find it at pontiac.media. On our website, there's a resources section, and it'll lead you to our YouTube site where we have walkthrough videos and other webinars where I've yapped and talked about this stuff. And then we also have links to our YouTube page, and that's where you can see that and different detail over the years that we've done. And then we also have a wiki about the platform. It's over 250 pages of content, as well as a certification course if you want to learn how to use the platform, all free, all accessible without registering anything. So you can find that at pontiac.media on the resources section.
Wonderful. Keith, thank you for all of the great content today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan. And I cut it a little close on the making sure that the link worked, but glad it all worked out. And maybe we'll do it again sometime. Thanks a lot.
All's well that ends well. All's well that ends well. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you all around the neighborhood. Take care, all.
Thanks.